Hi, my name is Cooper Phillips, and the story I chose is Utopia by Thomas More. I titled it Utopia with a question mark because when you read the story, it doesn't sound totally like a utopia. What really is Utopia? Utopia is a fictional dialogue where traveler Raphael Hythloday describes a perfect society on a remote island. Utopia is written by Thomas More. More, born on February 7th, 1478, was a lawyer, humanist, and counselor to Henry VIII, giving him political advice on matters of state and religion. In Utopia, More shows a society that looks perfect on the outside, but only works because people give up their freedom. He uses this to point out problems in his own time, like greed and unfair laws. Historical and authorial context. Thomas More was executed in 1535 for refusing to support King Henry VIII's break from the Catholic Church. More was a Christian humanist and was interested in reforming society using reason and ethics. Utopia reflects Renaissance humanist ideals and critiques England's social problems such as poverty, greed, and injustice. This quote basically says that it's wrong that people that do little make a fortune while the hard workers make little to nothing. The role of law and justice. Utopians have few lawyers because laws are simple and understandable to all. Crime is punished by servitude, not death. The goal is to reform them, not get revenge. This is unlike other societies during the time, which would commonly execute criminals. For the quote I chose, they have very few laws, and their training is such that they need no more. For my analysis of this, More critiques England's corrupt legal system. The simplicity of Utopia's legal system shows how justice might work if it weren't influenced by wealth and power. Economic structure and property. In Utopia, private property doesn't exist. Goods are stored in warehouses and people take what they need. No money leads to less greed and more equality. For the quote I chose, as long as private property remains, by far the largest and the best part of the human race will be oppressed by a heavy and inescapable burden of cares and anxieties. For my analysis, I said, More contrasts Utopia with England's division of economic class and their greed-driven society. But he does say that this equality is like impossible. Regulation and individual freedom. Citizens in Utopia live under pretty strict rules like assigned work, limited travel, and they have arranged marriages. For the quote I chose, anyone who takes upon himself to leave his district without permission and is caught without the governor's letter is treated with contempt, brought back as a runaway, and severely punished. For my analysis, I said while Utopia is peaceful, it lacks personal freedom. I think More is trying to warn that order often comes at the cost of individuality. Contemporary connections. For my modern parallels, I found that the Hunger Games or Fahrenheit 451 are pretty similar to Utopia because they both explore control and surveillance. Ongoing debates over capitalism and socialism are also another parallel. Real-world attempts at utopian societies often fail. For example, New Harmony in 1825 and Brook Farm in 1841, which collapsed after financial troubles and a major fire. For my analysis, I said More's utopia still resonates because we continue to struggle with inequality, justice, and the balance between freedom and order in today's society. I chose Utopia because its questions about freedom, justice, and equality are still relevant today. While reading Utopia, I noticed how the society seems ideal on the surface, but is actually full of restrictions. In my project, I focused on how More could be using this strict society to criticize real governments in his time. I designed the presentation to be clean and logical. I felt that using a slideshow voiceover would help me explain my thoughts and think more critically about the text and how we define a perfect society. For my two discussion questions, I said, do you think a society like Utopia could work today? If so, what would have to change for it to succeed? And for my second question, is More seriously proposing his idea for an ideal society, or is he using satire to criticize Utopia in England?